Here's how to get the drum sounds of the 1970s. I recently picked up this Pearl kit from 1982. So not 70s, but it's a concert tom kit, meaning there's no heads on the bottoms of the toms. And that's something I've really been looking for, so I can sort of channel my 1970s Steve Gadd, right? One of my favorite drummers of all time. And his sound is just something that I strive for sometimes in the studio, to get that dead and punchy, super focused sound that was on a lot of great records of the 70s. Not just Gadd, I mean, Porcaro, just the list goes on. So many great bands would record drums this way. So I'm going to break down how I have this set up and how I go about getting this sound, and you'll hear some examples. Okay, so now for a little tour of the kit. The dampening and the heads are a really huge part of getting that 70s sound. You don't necessarily need a kit from the 70s, but the way that you tune it and the way you set it up is super important. Okay, so as you can see, we've got 421s, Sennheiser 421s on all the toms. We've got the remote controlled sound heads, gives it a really nice focused attack. And I've got these kind of muffle rings around them. I just make them out of old drum heads, usually tape them down a little bit so they don't rattle. The snare drum, Ludwig Acrolite, classic for getting this sound that we're going for. Hi-hat mic, AKG 451E. That's the CK5 capsule on it. Short SM57 on the snare. Short SM58 on the bottom, basically a 57. My overheads are these cool Audio-Technica 4051A. They're an older version. They're not made anymore, but they just have a really nice scoop, and they're real crispy. Helps to give me that sound that I'm looking for. Okay, so for the kick mic, I've got this EV-RE15, and I'm just going to place it kind of as far as I can get it in there with this stand, so that it's sort of looking at the bass drum beater. It's going to give me a nice kind of round sound and some attack. So yeah, the reason that I'm using that RE15 is because back in the day, they used to use a lot of times maybe like an RE20 on the kick, or a 421, or even an SM57. I've seen all that kind of different stuff on kicks in like old magazines and things like that. So this was the closest thing that I had to one of those old dynamics that I wasn't already using. Something like a newer mic, like a Beta 52 or D112. I mean, those would definitely work, but to get the 70s sound right out of the gate, I think that this is going to get me a little bit closer, because it'll be a little bit less low end, a little bit more low mid and upper mids that I can carve out that sound. So the last piece of this puzzle to get the 1970s drum sound is to, of course, hit some analog tape on the way in. So I'm going to show you my setup, which allows me to record to tape and to Pro Tools at the same time, so that I can decide which I like the sound of. I also do it so I know where to line up the tracks after the fact, since there is a delay between the tape signal and the direct signal into Pro Tools. That's because of the way that tape machines work. When you have the repro head, there's a slight delay there that happens between the sound getting recorded and then the sound getting played back. So it's really helpful for me to have both tracks in the computer so I can see exactly where to nudge the tape tracks back in time so that they align with what I initially played. So I'll show you that setup. It's pretty simple. If you have a Patchbay or a console, this setup is not that hard. But you need to have a tape machine that has 3 heads. Okay, so like some of the old Tascams and stuff like that are only 2-head machines, or some of the old reel-to-reels that were just made for listening back to music. Those, a lot of them don't have 3 heads, or a lot of cassette decks only have 2 heads. So those are tough because you have to record onto it, rewind it, play it back, and you might experience what's called tape drift, where it doesn't play back at a steady speed. It might kind of speed up or slow down. So when this is in repro, it's pretty solid, so I don't notice much drift on this thing. This is a pretty solid machine. A lot of people used to use this. So, all right, let's check out the setup. So all of the mics are getting patched into mostly this bank of preamps here. I also have the console, but I'm using mostly these APIs or CAPI preamps. And so the mics are going in there. Then over here on the Patchbay, the outputs of those get patched to the tape machine. Input, which you can see over here, it says MX in 1. Okay. That just helps me mark where 1 is. I know I'm kind of lazy with my labeling, but that's where the inputs of the tape machine are. And then the outputs of the tape machine are here. So it goes from the preamps to the tape machine input over here, out of the tape machine, which is here on the Patchbay, and that goes into a separate 8 inputs, which are these colorful cables on this bottom Patchbay here. Okay, those are going into a separate 8 channels on my interface, and all of the preamps are half normaled. Okay, meaning I can send it to 2 places at once. So right there where it says PT in, the preamps are going to Pro Tools. They're going to tape, right? The MX in 1. Then they're going out. So it's a lot going on. Probably a little advanced if you don't know anything about Patchbays, but I do have another video about Patchbays and their modes. So go ahead and check that out if you haven't. Okay, let's see what this sounds like. All right, so here's what it looks like when I have the tracks recorded. Okay, so the red tracks up here, those are the Pro Tools tracks. Those are the ones that go directly into Pro Tools. And then these pink tracks are the tape tracks. So those hit the tape machine and then go into Pro Tools. So you can see that the first transient hits come in a lot later on the tape because of that delay that I was talking about. So what I like to do is get the 2 of the close mics right next to each other. So the kick from the Pro Tools and kick from tape, so that they're right next to each other so I can see. I don't want to use a room mic or something like that, or an overhead, because it's just a little harder to see the transients. I like to do it this way. So now I can see where I need to bring these tape tracks back to. Right? I want them to line up with what I initially played, which is the red ones. So here's how I like to do this. All right, so I'm going to turn off the groups. I have groups for each one, so that'll be helpful in a second. Okay, so I go to this kick in track for the Pro Tools, tab to transient, turn the Pro Tools group back on. I'm going to hit the P key on my keyboard so that all the tracks are highlighted. Okay, I'm going to then split it just so I can see where it is. It's not totally necessary to do that because I'm not moving those tracks, but I do it anyway. Okay, so now I'm going to put my tape group on, and I'm going to hit the semicolon key so that all of my tape tracks are highlighted at the spot that I want to drag them back to. So now I'm going to split those. Okay. Cool. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off my tape group, and I'm going to click in here, tab to transient to get to that kick transient, turn the tape group back on, hit semicolon so everything's highlighted. I'm going to split those now. Then I go to shuffle mode in Pro Tools, and now all I have to do is hit delete, and there we go. We're pretty much exactly lined up. And then from there, right, I'll just double check and see what we're looking like. Phase-wise, it could be a little bit different depending, but that's looking pretty good. That's pretty well lined up. And I know now that all of these tracks will relatively line up with what I initially played into Pro Tools. So that's how you do it for lining them up. And once you do it a couple times, it's super fast.